Star Wars The Heart of the Jedi by Kenneth C. Flint. Chapter 24. A door slid aside on the rear of the entrepreneur. From the landing bay inside it, a small shuttlecraft emerged. It was a tiny version of the salvage scow, looking rather like an infant version of the angular mothercraft. It turned to sweep around her, and then headed away, sailing across the gap of space towards the surrounding hollow sphere of painted ships. The course it said headed directly for the large blossom-shaped vessel sitting dead ahead of the scow. At the shuttle's controls was Luke Skywalker, once again venturing out alone. He peered ahead through his front windows at the odd craft as he approached it, taking note of the glowing details. The long, wedge-shaped rays could now be seen as being made of transparent sheets, tinted in various shades. When the shuttle passed directly above one of those petal sections, he was able to look down through the flat-top surface to what was contained within. It appeared to be a piece of countryside, a pie slice of landscape, complete with hills, fields, and streams, dotted with exotically shaped trees and gaudily hued plants. Everything was like it might be on a whole planet, except for the light source. In the sunless depths of space, an artificial illumination for growth was supplied by massive globes suspended just below the shielding covers of each cell. Miniature suns glowed with a variety of molten metal hues, from a red gold to a platinum white, duplicating the sunlight of various homeworlds. Ahead of him now was the clear central dome, itself with a much larger globe of a warm yellow, blazing within its peak. Beneath the dome grew dense foliage that was largely shades of green. He circled around the structure slowly, spiraling in closer. On one side at the dome's base, he spotted a platform projecting out from the smooth surface. A ring of pulsing light atop it indicated it was a landing pad. Well, here goes, he said determinedly to himself, and dropped the shuttle gently down on it. Immediately, once the little ship had settled, a section of dome wall behind it slid aside, and the platform was drawn inward. The section slid back into place once it was fully within, enclosing the shuttle in a box of an airlock. Luke sat, waiting patiently while a whooshing sound without told him the chamber was pressurizing. When the sound stopped and an inner door began to slide open, he knew it was his time to emerge. He went to the ship's outer hatch, started to open it, then paused. Purposefully, he unbuckled his weapons belt, leaving blaster and lightsaber on the deck inside before going out. He stepped up to the inner door just as it slid fully aside, revealing his reception party. They were a somewhat motley-looking crew. In the 3 dozen or so waiting there, a wide variety of living species was represented. There were those of reptile, mammal, bird, and insect types. Some looked quite human. Some were so alien as to defy description. A slim, furry, simian-like creature of huge, lustrous eyes and long, curled tail approached. "So, you are the one who comes as a pilgrim," it said in a purring, breathy voice. "But just where have you come from?" "Before I answer, I'd like to ask you something first," he said cautiously. "Do you hold any allegiance to the Empire?" This raised a resounding chorus of laughs from the lot. Hoots, guffaws, cackles, twitters, and chuckles of glee. For all their seeming differences, the beings had that one trait alike. "Allegiance, he says. Allegiance, he says," said the tailed one through his own giggling. "Why, my dear human, we are all of us here fugitives of the Empire." "We left to avoid a terrible fighting," put in another being of several limbs, lavender scales, and a dozen compound eyes. "Many of us fled from the real destruction. More of us fled out of fear of it. Some came to escape conscriptions. Others were deserters from the military. But all of us hold one belief in common. We hate war." "Enough," said a humanoid being, pushing forward. His burly body was only clad in a short kilt, his arms and chest tattooed in broad, swirling designs. A long mane of jet-black hair fell loose about his shoulders. His manner was a bit more aggressive than that of the rest. "Just tell us who you are now, stranger." How do we know you're not a spy for the Empire?" "He's not a spy, Storm." This remark came from a willowy young woman with flowing white gold hair and a long pale green gown. She walked boldly up to Luke and looked closely at his face. her violet eyes probing his. Then she looked to the black-haired man. No, no, she said with certainty. There is no deceit in him. Nor are those in the Empire too devious for even you to sense, Iceland, replied the one called Storm. He grabbed hold of her elbow and gently, firmly, pulled her back behind him. Then he stepped meaningfully toward Luke. It's what he could be hiding in that old junk scow that I want to know about. I'm not hiding anything, Luke assured him. My name is Luke Skywalker. I was a member of the Alliance in rebellion against the Empire. Was? The big man repeated. What's that mean? The war had already ended when I left, he explained. The remnants of the Empire were fighting on, but amongst themselves mainly, and losing badly since the Emperor was dead. The rebellion became the Alliance of Free Planets, and after successfully fighting off several invasions, became the New Republic. Sounds of astonishment were raised in the group at these words. Clearly this was momentous news. Are you certain about the Emperor? The long-tailed one asked. I saw him destroyed myself, Luke said. With his power crumbled and the Imperial fleet on the run, they called for a truce. So far as I know, negotiations for peace, under the conditions of the New Republic, are underway right now. They may have already ended. Well, joke's on you, Luke. New canon says that Palpatine actually survived being thrown down that shaft and then being inside of the Death Star when it exploded. Oh well, sucks for you. Peace, said a withered old man of bald head and long white whiskers. After all this time, I've been hiding out here since before the Clone Wars. Don't even know how long it's been. Well, it means you'll finally be able to leave if you want, Luke told him. You'll be able to go home. I'm not sure it does mean that, said the one called Storm. Why not? I think it's time he went to see the Sky Pilot. Oh, I think it's time he went to see the Sky Pilots, the long-tailed one told the others. And to Luke he added, I believe that he can make all here clear to you. Yes, said the one called Islin, putting out a hand to him. Come with me. You can trust me. I'll lead you to him. Storm looked disapproving, but didn't interfere as Luke took her hand and went with her. The others followed along. They took him ahead into the massive vegetation that all but filled the central dome. It was like a captured segment of a rainforest, lifted bodily from its original location with all elements intact. Dense tropical foliage grew up all around them. Long vines and creepers dangled in intertwining array. The air was dense with the humidity, the fragrant scents of glowing things, and the earthy odor of plant decay blended in the heavy atmosphere. Luke followed the sprightly young woman along a twisting, narrow path through the underbrush. Birds of brilliant plumage and effervescent song flew overhead. Small, curious creatures slithered or hopped out of their way. This place, said Luke as they walked along this ship. What is it, anyway? It was an experiment to start with, the lavender-scaled being said. Our sky pilot himself began it in his old life. He called it his crusade. He took up sections of nature from threatened planets in an attempt to preserve as many of them as he could. You see, said the long-tailed one, each outer segment of the disk is a separate, closed ecosystem, with a slice of its own planet intact. Atmosphere, soil, water, wildlife, plants, all maintained just as they were. Light duplicating that of its home sun. Even the tint of the envelope enclosing each matches the color of its planet's sky. Or what was its sky for some. What was? Luke echoed. Some of those fragile bits of life are now very, very rare, Iceland said sadly. The unique, beautiful ecosystems they came from have ceased to be. Ruined or destroyed by your war, Storm added bitterly. Luke let the remark pass, but it stung him no less. It was when our leader saw that happening that he found he couldn't stand it anymore, Storm continued. He took what he had and fled here, hoping to save at least this much. It's become our spiritual center. Our heart, our focus of life, really, said the Old One. What about this dome? Asked Luke. Whose world is this? The Sky Pilot's own, said Aislinn, and at its core is his home. They were nearly to that core now. Here grew a set of 4 trees, each 12 yards thick. They rose up in a square. In a square-like massive columns? No. No A there. They rose up in square-like massive columns, the greenery of the spreading branches at their tops brushing against the curved roof. As Luke's party passed near the base of one of them, he looked in amazement at its straight, solid trunk, and at the high arching roots about the base that buttressed its soaring mass. Past these trees they came into a circular cleared area, at the very center of the dome. Its floor was of beaten earth. Around its circumference was set a circle of a dozen rough-hewn standing stones, each of man height. In the middle of this ring was yet another stone, shorter and squatter, its top rounded as if worn down. A lean, copper-skinned humanoid in a white sarong sat cross-legged beside it. It's Gandhi! Luke and his escorting party stopped just outside the ring. That means he has nukes! Civ reference for those that don't get it. Luke and his escorting party stopped just outside the ring. At their approach, the man seemed to have been sleeping or meditating, eyes closed, head down, hands folded upon his lap. But as they stopped, he looked up towards them. He had a large, high-domed head, totally devoid of hair. His face was of a fresh-skinned, lineless type that made his age indeterminable, though there seemed a wisdom of uncountable years glowing in his startlingly silver-blue eyes. You know, I want to do a really bad Indian accent for his voice. I'll restrain myself, but I want to. He smiled warmly at Luke. Our visitor, he said. Welcome to our place of living. I don't think we should be so quick with that welcoming. We don't know what to make of him, Storm said bluntly. He says he's from the Alliance, New Republic they're calling it now. Claims the war's ending. Step forward, please, friend. Please, the man asked Luke, gesturing inviting to him. The young woman released his hand, smiling encouragement. Go on, she said. You're safe. He nodded and stepped past the outer stones into the ring. As he approached the man, he glanced upward. The leafy branches of the 4 trees arched and intercepted to form a natural groin. Groin. Vaulting high above. That and the surrounding columns of the trunks cast the clearing in a cathedral-like atmosphere. Luke stopped a couple of paces from the man. The bright eyes studied him piercingly. I feel a strange presence about you, young visitor, he said. What's your name? I'm called Luke Skywalker. Ah. The man seemed impressed. There is a name of much portent, he said. It's the name of one whose very strides may shake the entire universe. Great ceremony indeed must have been involved in naming you. Luke shrugged. I don't know. I was born with it. It's a family name. Family of some vast purpose it must be, the man declared. My own birth name was Nestor, a humble one at best. It was my people here, my new family of homeless children, who dubbed me with the Sky Pilot title. They see me as a sort of spiritual leader, you see. Bit of priest, chieftain, and father, all rolled into one. He smiled. Hardly deserved, but there it is. It's a great responsibility. I understand that, Luke told him earnestly. I hadn't even really begun to think of myself as a grown-up when I was suddenly an officer leading men into battle. It's a terrible responsibility, a lonely one. Now you say that war is ending, the other said. Must give you great relief. I am glad it's over, said Luke. He waved back towards the others. But maintaining peace is going to be everyone's responsibility. Indeed, Wisely stated. Your people seem to think that even if there's peace in the galaxy, you won't go home. The man nodded. They are right in that. Reasons are many. Some of those in our little community no longer have homes to return to. Their dwellings, their towns, sometimes their whole planets should be planets, not planets, were consumed by the fires of war. And then there are others who would be ostracized or even killed by their own people should they return to them. Why? Asked a shocked Luke. For acts deemed dishonorable, cowardly, or treasonous by their social orders. Those who refuse to fight in times of war, no matter what the cause, are not often looked upon with favor. He looked at Luke curiously. You are clearly intelligent and knowledgeable. I'm surprised you don't know this already. There's a lot I don't know about how things work in the galaxy, Luke told him ruefully. But you're talking about those who refuse to fight for the Empire. The Alliance as well, the other said. We also have those who have fled from your organization, or from the threat of having to serve it. Ours? Said Luke uncomprehendingly. But we're trying to free the galaxy from tyranny, from evil. There is no greater evil than war, said the long-tailed being from behind him, which is why we've eschewed it. But hiding here, said Luke, looking around to the group, that can't accomplish anything. That can't end war. I mean, if you just drift around, well, what purpose does that serve? What ultimate purpose lies in your own world, strife and striving? The sky pilot countered. Luke looked back to him. What do you mean? Do you think your efforts have eradicated war? The man asked serenely. You are yet young and idealistic, but I think you will see with your own eyes that the ways of violence can only breed more violence. Wars will erupt again and again. We have found something more, something that transcends the physical realm, something to make its tribulations unimportant by comparison. Here, in this peaceful zone of space, we have found a new reality, a new awareness. We have become truly free of our mundane trappings, free to indulge in our senses, to open our minds, to float unfettered on the eternal currents of its power. Power? Luke repeated. Yes, it is strong here, Guide looked shrewdly, as I think you know. Understand it wasn't chance that brought us all to unite in this single area of space. We were all only seeking a place of refuge at first, scattered through the unknown regions, but then a sense, feeling of power drew us here, consciously or not, binding us in a whole. Over the years we've come to worship it, and to meld with it as best we can. We have become children, the Force. You know about the Force? Luke said in astonishment. Those among us of sensitive or empathic characteristics understood its influence first. We have trained the rest to do so, through methods of releasing conscious thought, letting go, entering into the energy flow. And this ring I have constructed, he waved around him at the stones, is a place where those attuned can come to meditate, bring the mind yet further. The shape of it seems to help. Luke looked with interest on the simple configuration. It does. How did you know it would? It came to me in a reverie, the man replied. It seemed somehow the fitting design and construction. I have no idea why, but it certainly does seem to work. The effect of the Force is much stronger on those who cast their spirits loose within it. Even an ordinary being such as I can truly come close to overcoming the mortal illusion of crude material reality. See here. He rose and climbed atop the central stone, sitting down again on its worn top. He put out his hands to the sides, closed his eyes, and concentrated. In moments, his body slowly levitated. It hung suspended several inches above the stone for a few moments, then settled back. You've learned how to use the Force, Luke exclaimed, openly impressed. In our simple ways, a few of us have, yes, said the man, climbing down and resuming his spot on the ground. But we would not dare do more. We are not grasping for power, but content to bathe in its flow, doing as we will in peace and pleasure. Sounds like an idyllic life, said Luke. Most fulfilling, the Sky Pilot agreed. Only fear of the Empire one day coming after us has hung above our heads as a dark cloud. Now it seems that even interference with the light will be swept away. But what of yourself? Have you also determined to renounce your past life? Is that why you've come here? Oh, say that it is, Aislinn told him eagerly. I know our spirit of freedom is strong in you. Please, join with us. I can't, Luke said. It's really tempting, but I have to go on. Go on? Their leader said, eyeing him and nodding sagely. I thought as much, my friend. You seek the place beyond, that sacred nexus of the Force. You know about that too? Asked Luke. Of course. Always understood where the streams of power flowing so densely through this part of space have their main link. It is not difficult to sense. Our drifting on their ebbs and floods keeps us close around the periphery. The great crossing point's strong aura. Not too close. You mean you haven't gone there? Oh, some did. In the early days, a few who thought their own rapport with the Force was strong enough went to seek oneness with that hub of energy. None of them returned. I say that none of us is truly worthy. Besides, our own abilities are not developed enough. We do not have the calling, so I have declared it as a holy place. Violated. I'm still afraid that's where I have to go. He's a damned desecrator, Storm called to his leader. He wants to profane our sacred ground. This is a trick! He was a stormtrooper until their violence drove him away, the Sky Pilot exclaimed to Luke. His views have become mellower since he came to us, but he still has a distrust. I can understand that, said Luke, but it's no trick. I have a need to go there. I'm a Jedi Knight. A Jedi? The Longtail Beating repeated skeptically. They have ceased to exist. All their knowledge is lost. Not quite, Luke answered. I was trained by the last two. I really am a Jedi. Don't listen, said Storm. He's not one of us. He's an Alliance warrior. I smell the blood on him. The others exchanged uncertain glances at this. The Sky Pilot considered his people for a moment, then looked to Luke. I believe what you are, young man, he said. I feel the power in you. Perhaps if you demonstrate it to them. All right. Luke nodded. All right. He looked to the others. I'll try to show you what I am. They spread out around the ring as Luke walked to its middle. He stopped by the central stone. Lifting his hands above it, he frowned in concentration. The central rock soon shivered, and then lifted bodily from the ground, hanging suspended. Luke slowly turned around his hands, taking in the outer stones. One by one they pulled loose from the ground and rose up as well. The watchers gasped in surprise. But his show was not finished. Once more he pivoted, swinging his hands around. This time it was the people who rose upward to float a foot above the ground. Most looked astonished as they were lifted. Aislinn laughed with delight. Storm gasped. Lastly, Luke's hands passed over the Sky Pilot, raising him too. I knew it, the man cried in mixed delight and awe. Truly, he does have the Jedi's power.